All right, everybody, next stage of the Pickems is here. Previous stage went really well, actually. I'm glad I got the 203 picks correct. I'm glad I went with my gut on this, and yeah, I ended up getting both of them right. I thought Pain were maybe a consideration, but they actually did way better than expected, coming all the way back. Didn't quite make it through, though. And then the 3-0 picks, I mean, I did come in here and say I wasn't sure if FaZe would go through 3-0. I feel like they normally drop maps. That proved to be right. And then a couple of my advanced picks, even the cheeky Eternal Fire belief paying off for me. Didn't have Cloud9, which was maybe a mistake. I had G2 and 3-0, but all in all, a very good stage. Let's go on to the playoffs, what you're waiting for, and let's just get into it with the first matchup, Cloud9 Vitality. It's interesting, I was looking at the odds for this one, and according to the odds, people seem to think that Vitality are maybe favored coming into this one. And I think there's arguments for both sides, but let's start with Cloud9. Cloud9 definitely have the better resume here. Just going to put that on paper and say it right now, that they not only had to play that previous stage and did well, but they have wins over Na'Vi, over G2, two teams that have made it here. Dominant win against Ecstatic as well. Their only real loss has been against Spirit, who are a very good team. And also, Axar's in form. Honestly, individually, the entire team looks in form. Hobbit's been playing well, which isn't something you'd necessarily expect. And yeah, Axar being so good has been great. Boomich's AWP has been better than expected. I don't know if that will continue in this stage, but it has been so far. And in general, Boomich's calling has been great. I've been really impressed. I think he's been calling some of the best T-sides here. The other thing that I think Cloud9 have is a veto advantage against Vitality. I really think they do. I think that you come into this and you get Cloud9 probably picking an overpass, which I think will go very well for them. Vitality probably go for an Inferno, which I do think they will win as well. But last time these teams played, the decider was Anubis, which Cloud9 I just think are so good on right now. The big question for me is, do Vitality shake up that veto? I think if I were them, I would very much be wanting to go for a Mirage Decider instead, if that is left as an option, and last time Cloud9 did leave it as an option. And if that were to happen, I think Vitality could have a very good chance, actually, on that Mirage Decider. But I don't know if we're going to go there. I think it would be better for Mirage, for the Vitality perspective, because you have a better chance to get your AWPer ZywOo involved, which is probably the weakness that Cloud9 have. And I also think, just in general, Cloud9 are just really good on Anubis. But at the same time, I think Vitality themselves think they're better on Anubis, and they will go for that as a comfort ground. And if that happens, I do think Cloud9 will probably edge this. For Vitality, here are the positives. Spinks is looking good. Flames is looking solid. Unfortunately, though, ZywOo has been playing poorly, below his normal standards. He's not been the best player in the earlier stages. He's only third highest rated. But he has been ill, apparently. So the question is, does his game improve enough to push them over the edge? Because, honestly, they didn't look, in my opinion, that impressive in this earlier stage. Like, you look at their wins, they're not great. I mean, yeah, you beat Complexity, but that was even close. And then close-ish maps against Imperial and the Mongols, who didn't do much. For me, I actually think I'm leaning Cloud9 here. I really do. And I know I didn't have them in the previous stage, but I just think they get the better veto. I think there's a good chance we go to Anubis as a decider, and Boomich seems to be really good at calling on that map, and I think that will give them the edge. Cloud9 are my first team through. Spirit FaZe is kind of a different story. I think you have to find a lot of reasons to want to believe in FaZe over Spirit here, based on the form we've seen from these teams. Because let's be real, we look at their paths to this point. Spirit, pretty decent so far, okay? You beat Na'Vi, it was a solid win there. You beat Cloud9 in an opening BO1 convincingly, another team that's made it through. Meanwhile, FaZe obviously only went through 3-2, and their wins are against Furia, who it was proven aren't that great here, Imperial, who again weren't that great, and Complexity, who obviously started strong but then quickly flamed out. And there's normally a team that does that, who starts 2-0 and then struggles, and by the end, they just seem a bit out of it. And I think that was probably Complexity throughout this tournament. Their losses, they got stomped by Eternal Fire. I mean, I don't know what happened there. It was a 13-1 loss. It just felt like they weren't even there to play on the server, which was wild. And then they actually lost against Heroic, which, listen, I don't think that's a bad loss, but Heroic didn't even make it through here. So FaZe, their results aren't looking that great. I think if you want positives for FaZe, Brokey was playing well in the earlier stage. That's definitely nice. I think there's a chance they could have a competitive AWPer here. But I haven't seen enough from Rops. I don't know what has happened to this guy. He's normally the consistent fragger. It has not been the case. And meanwhile, for Spirit, I mean, again, we said their wins are very solid. They basically just look very good all round yet again. Basically, everyone is playing at the level I'd expect. Maybe Donk has been like slightly less crazy than you are expecting, which I think is fair. I think he will have a small drop-off because teams have been studying him, and there are some tendencies to his game that can maybe be exploited a little. He plays the same way a lot of times, but you also can't deny his skill. And you can't deny that Shiro is also a fantastic AWPer, and he has been right up there with Donk throughout this period. It's just so hard to see FaZe winning this. I'm sorry. For me, Spirit, pretty solid victors here. The only way you can think FaZe might win is if they have a big step up under the pressure of the arena, which is possible. But then I think you'd also need Spirit to have a step down because of the arena or because of some other reason. And I don't think they'll feel the pressure. We've seen it already at Katowice. They can play under the lights. They can play in front of the crowd. I don't think they'll drop off, and I think they're just looking very good right now. Eternal Fire Na'Vi, for me, the biggest toss-up of this opening matches. I think this will be an incredible game. I have good reasons for both teams to win. And it's tough, man. I like this matchup, but I also hate it because I want to be an Eternal Fire believer, and I can give you some reasons. Firstly, Eternal Fire, for me, are a very, very good team when they get time to prepare. We heard Major spends loads of hours preparing hard for games, for series. They are a very good counter-stratting team. And obviously, every team is putting time into looking at what their opponents are doing, to coming up with counters. But Eternal Fire are the ones who, for me, execute it potentially the best out of any team here. Potentially the best in Counter-Strike right now. And so they get a bit of time to prepare for this match, which I think helps them tremendously. There are some questions. Major has been overperforming a bit on the fragging. I don't think that continues. That could be a struggle. And honestly, Woxic has been a little quiet. He hasn't been that great on the AWP, which is a little bit of a concern. But their wins are pretty great. I mean, they've beat VP, they've beat FaZe, they've beat Vitality. These are all solid wins to have under your belt. For Na'Vi, it's interesting because in theory, on paper, there are a few negatives against them. I mean, Imma has been nowhere at this tournament. I'm just going to say it. He's barely better rated than Alexi B, which is a big concern. Bit has been inconsistent, but he played a bit better towards the end, which is a good sign. Wonderful has been pretty solid. I think JL is the one player who's maybe been stepping up a little more than the rest. But you look at their wins, I mean, again, they're not that impressive. But at the same time, their losses were against Cloud9 and Spirit. So maybe not too many negatives to take from that. I think the thing that really helps Na'Vi here is the veto can be pretty nice for them in this one, actually, if you look at it. Because they ban Vertigo, which is a great map for Eternal Fire out of the pool already. And it kind of limits Eternal Fire's options in the veto. I mean, these teams played somewhat recently, and when they did, Eternal Fire picked Nuke, which is actually a very solid map for Na'Vi. Na'Vi would have upset potential already on that map. Maybe Eternal Fire could switch it and go for like an overpass instead, but I don't know. That feels sketchy as hell as well. So yeah, that's already a tough start. And then I think Na'Vi get a good chance to have a free reign on their pick, and even on a decider map, I think Na'Vi's map pool just actually goes pretty well against Eternal Fire here. But at the same time, I have a bit more faith in Eternal Fire with their prep. I also think, though, here's the thing with Na'Vi. Some of their players haven't been playing well, but the actual team Counter-Strike, the actual structure of their rounds looks very, very good. They're actually winning a lot of rounds, I think, based on good calls and team play and Alexi B. And that means even if Eternal Fire can prep, I think I have faith in Alexi. I think I have just enough faith that he can find solutions if he thinks he's getting hard red and hard anti-stratted. And the other question for Eternal Fire is Wicadia. He's been very good. He's been their third star. He's been their player that's come in and really done well for them. But over at Katowice, he dropped off a bit in some of the bigger games against some of the bigger teams. And in fact, against Na'Vi, he played pretty damn badly the last time he played this team. He was down there with Major towards the bottom of the server. And so for me, I really hate to do this because I really like Eternal Fire. I love their story. I think against a lot of other teams, I would maybe pick them because of their prep work. But I think Na'Vi's a bad matchup for them. For whatever reason, it seems like Na'Vi probably get the better of them. And it's a shame, but I actually do think Na'Vi will get this win here. MOUZ G2. G2? Okay, question marks as to whether they should even be here, of course, based on the Jame crash, which maybe I'll talk about in another video. They don't exactly have a good resume, do they? I mean, I'm not going to lie. They haven't looked like dominant or great coming into this tournament. The thing is, though, MOUZ are, I think, the trickiest team to pin right now. Because MOUZ have come into this stage, close win over Ecstatic, 13-11, close win over Eternal Fire, 13-11, on Vertigo, which is an impressive win, and then a 2-0 over Complexity, who I don't think that says much about you as a team, to be honest, MOUZ. I don't think that was a big test once we got into that series. And I really think MOUZ are a team whose highs can be very high, but there are some questions as to, firstly, the level Torgi's going to bring. Torgi was good in the earlier stage of this, but in general, he's a little shaky on the AWP, and I think going into playoffs, that could start to shine through. I'm not sure he'll be quite as good. He has been better recently, but compared to the caliber of AWPers on some of these other teams, especially when you're going against a m0NESY, don't know if he'll be able to deliver as much. And then secondly, in their win over Eternal Fire, which I think is their most legit win, Exertion was playing very, very well. And Exertion is a pretty inconsistent player for me. And I don't say that as a bad thing. He plays aggressively, he plays tough spots. I think he's a very good aimer, but sometimes he can be inconsistent with his gameplay because of that. And in general, I'd probably lean against him sometimes in playoff matches. And so normally he's the cherry on top that really gives them a great amount of firepower, but I'm not sure he's always going to bring it in these games. At the same time, I have seen him bring it in some big games in the past. So maybe I'm being a bit harsh there, but I just mean in general, he's a bit of an inconsistent player, and that could be a tough thing for MOUZ to handle. On the other hand, G2, I mean, I made a video talking about it. Their map pool is sus as hell. It's really sus right now. You saw it against VP. I mean, they were finally forced to play a BO3, and Virtus.pro picked the overpass, a map that G2 have been banning a lot. It was actually way closer than I thought it would be, that overpass. It actually went to overtime in the end. But I think that was mainly because G2 got two good starts on their halves. They won the CT pistol. They won the T-side force back after they lost that second half pistol. So they got good starts on both halves, but I think VP were better in the gun rounds. And then G2, I mean, they don't seem to want to play Ancient. They don't seem to want to play Mirage. And these are all maps that actually suit MOUZ pretty damn well. I also think for G2, it's interesting because Hunter has actually been playing pretty decently. And that is something I thought would be a win condition for them. But Nico has gone quiet in some games. And that was, for me, something that had to be a certain for this team to do well. He's not been that great for them. He's not been as good as he should be. m0NESY has been good as ever. But there's just too many mistakes being made by this team right now for me. And yeah, they have the firepower and sometimes they can get some wild wins. But I do think MOUZ are the better squad all round. I think they're playing pretty good Team CS right now. And so I think these are the semi-finals we get. Cloud9 Spirit is interesting. This would be a rematch. Spirit beat them 13-7 last time, pretty comfortably in the end. And I'm going to be honest, I think they'd probably take the rematch again. I think Cloud9 they're a good team and they're playing well, but they're a flawed team in some senses. And I actually think the map pool here might be nice for Spirit. They might be able to get Cloud9 away from those one or two maps that I think Cloud9 are really, really good on. And if you can get like an Ancient Decider again, I mean, goddamn, that is huge. Like that would, I think, give them a fantastic opportunity because I don't think Cloud9 looked too great in that previous game. And it's tough. Maybe Cloud9 would go for like a nuke decider, but even then, I think Spirit are really good on that map. I think that would maybe be better for Cloud9. They're probably a better nuke team than Ancient team, but still, I actually think the veto is really good for Spirit here. I think they've got a very good chance of making it through to that final. Na'Vi MOUZ, I think, would be very interesting as well. Na'Vi, again, a team where they definitely have had some flaws. If some of the players can step up just a little bit, I think they're in the running to win this. I genuinely do. If Imma can step up, if Alexi can get back to being a slightly better fragging in-game leader, they've got a real good chance, especially if Bit, who has been a bit streaky at this event, can play consistently well. I actually think they would have a chance in this one. I do think I lean MOUZ, though. I do think I leave MOUZ. I think Impact is very good. I think they're probably just the slightly better team in terms of firepower. And then I'd say tactically and structurally, these two teams are fairly similar right now. It is close, but I lean MOUZ for a Spirit MOUZ final. And listen, I'm going to be boring. I just think Spirit are playing so well right now. They are playing so well right now. I don't see them getting nervous. If anything, some of the MOUZ players could get nervous as well. And I just don't know if someone like a Brolan, for example, is someone who's going to really continue to be great in these positions. Is Exertion going to continue to play as well as he's been playing in a final, for example? I'm not sure. And so I do think Spirit, for me, based on their team play, based on their individuals, have the best chance. That is my lock-in. That is the final stage. These playoffs look great, by the way, so make sure to tune in for them, and we will see if I'm right. I hope I am, because I actually feel very good about this. I put a good bit of thought into it. I think Spirit probably the best here. Thanks for watching. Let's get into the playoffs, boys.